Welcome, everyone. I think we'll give a few more minutes before we get started the post-lunch session and also hold tight. In a couple of minutes, we'll jump right in. Thank you for attending, and we'll be with you shortly. Okay, so I think we gained a few more in that couple minutes. So we'll get going. Just a quick reminder before we get going at the end. Travis will put in a slide with the survey. So please do take the time at the end to do that. And we're excited to have Travis here to present. Travis, you have the floor.
All right. Thank you so much, Stephen. All right, so good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out to my presentation, Being Intentional with the International. Let's get it. So just a little bit about me. My name is Travis Bell. I am a second-year international graduate student here at the University of Central Arkansas. Go Bears. I am from the beautiful Twin Island Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. There it is. I am from the bigger one, St. Kitts, which is shaped like a drumstick, as most people say, like a chicken drumstick. And then our sister island, Nevis, we say that's the plate. And then in the top right, that is a picture of me and my staff, my 5 amazing resident assistants. I oversee our Greek village housing, mainly the Panhellenic Sorority buildings. So what are we going to learn in this session? So the learning outcomes, participants will become more familiar with issues and challenges international students are facing within our institutions. Participants will gain knowledge of strategies to increase intentionality with international students. And participants will be able to understand the importance of student affairs professionals on the decision-making process of international students who choose to remain within the U.S. post-graduation. And just a little heads up, this is actually what my master's thesis is focused on. So you're getting a first-hand view of some of the research that I've done so far. So first things first, what or who is an international student? So an international student is defined as anyone who is enrolled at an institution of higher education in the United States, who is not a U.S. citizen, an immigrant or a permanent resident, or a refugee. These may include holders of F, which are the student visas, J, exchange visas holders, and M, vocational training visas. So if you're a holder of any of these 3, you're considered an international student. Most of the time, you would have somebody living in your residence hall who is a holder of an F1 visa. Now let's look at some contributions and investments to higher education made by international students. So international students can contribute significantly to higher education, not only financially, but also culturally, in terms of facilitating the development of intercultural competencies among all students and influencing the institution's internationalization efforts in positive ways. So throughout those dynamic and energetic exchanges international students have with their peers, they're actually increasing their peers' cultural competencies, because some residents or some students may not know of these different countries that are outside of the US, And through these engaging dialogues and intentional conversations, they're then becoming more aware of them. Additionally, fostering meaningful engagement of international students with the rest of the university community, integrating intercultural perspectives into the classroom, and encouraging domestic students to operate in multicultural groups and teams can enhance the student experience and complement institutional recruitment and retention strategies. So if you have international students within your universities, within your residence halls, you want to try and bridge that gap between domestic students and those international student population through intentional dialogue, through engaging conversation, as they will then increase and enhance both the international student experience as well as that domestic student's experience. So whether it be through your resident assistants or your student staff, putting on intentional programming that focuses on perhaps one of the cultures of one of those students in that building, where they have the opportunity to come and share about their country to the rest of the floor, the rest of the wing, that type of stuff. That allows the student to feel, one, included and feel present and heard, because they're able to share their perspective of where they came from or where they call home to others who are willing to listen. In addition to the social and cultural contributions international students make to their institutions, they also help create jobs and add invaluable scientific innovation and technological improvements to the local community. So universities and institutions love to boast about how diverse their workforce is. Most of the times they look at the different student population that are part of those workforces. So they may be like, oh, we have X amount of students from X amount of countries across the world and stuff like that. So we we as international students definitely add that diversity aspect to the workforce as well. According to the International Student Enrollment Statistics, in 2019, the total number of international students enrolled in U.S. colleges and universities was 1,095,299. Making up 5.5% of the U.S. student body. In 2019, the total contribution to the U.S. economy by international students was estimated to be over $45 billion, based on international student enrollment statistics. So, not only is the enrollment of international students increasing, but the amount of money international students are contributing to the economy increases year by year as well. Just goes to show you how important this student population is. So we looked at some contributions and investments. Now let us look at some issues and challenges international students face. So despite these significant contributions to higher education within the US made by international students, the rules and regulations in place as it pertains to this student population continue to suppress them in more ways than one. Studies have shown that international students are lonely in their new environment because of not having familiar friends and social networks, because of exposure to the new culture, and of course being challenged by the linguistic and cultural nuances of language. So these all play into the social and mental aspect of international students, because one, this could have been some of them first time leaving their country and embracing and immersing themselves within a new environment definitely brings about culture shock. Them not having their familiar friends and social networks can definitely lead to alienation as well. Studies also highlighted the needs of social support and social networking for international student success. So it is key that we as student affairs professionals know what our international student population need in order to thrive and success within our residence halls. We don't want to leave it just up to their faculty, their professors. We need to do our job as well in helping them, because learning and education extends beyond the classroom. So having more international students in the university from the same social background might support their success. For example, when I was an undergrad, I was a part of the Caribbean Student Association. Being from the Caribbean myself and being around people who share similar culture, values, music, it made my transition process a lot easier, because I then attached to them because that was something that was familiar to me. International students find it extremely difficult to secure on-campus employment and on-campus scholarships, as most are only applicable to permanent residents or American citizens. So, for example, international students who are paying for the education out of pocket, this financial burden puts much strain on their bodies and affects their emotional and mental well-being, because they're wondering, well, where am I going to get my next check from? Or I can't ask my parents for any more money because I already exhausted that option. And being able to apply for jobs on campus is extremely difficult just because they're an international student. So considering international students are also unable to file for FAFSA, they depend heavily on these on-campus employment to try and gain some sort of income. Hint, why many international students try to apply to become an RA, because of the compensation that some of them offer. So whether it be you get free housing, you get partial free housing, or you get like a hefty stipend, international students tend to cling to residence life, which is why this is such a big deal for us who are in housing and residence life to have that type of impact and intentional engagement with the international students. Within the transition process international students go through, they're moving towards one of independence. However, for those within collectivist cultures, there has been a strong connection between them and their families, which may have severed and which may have served as a major support system. So them having to give up that support system also plays into how they transition into the US higher education realm. Studies also identified emotional pain, such as feelings of powerlessness, marginality, inferiority, loneliness, and perceived alienation and discrimination prevalent among international students. So, for example, when the COVID situation just started last year, international students from Asia were facing heavy discrimination because of what the president was spewing. He mentioned the China virus, stuff like that. So they were facing they were feeling powerlessness, they were feeling marginalized by their peers and even people who may not know them just because of that what was being presented. Alienation as well. Some people feel very alone to themselves because they don't have anybody that they can connect or engage with. Data from the Institute of International Education showed that the majority of international students in the US are from Asia. As such, it becomes important to understand the contextual cultural barriers too. It was also revealed that Asian international students may have higher difficulties on interacting and attempting to make social connections and make friends within a Western culture, which emphasizes individualism, assertiveness, and self-sufficiency over interdependence and relatedness. Some show the concerns about safety and travel and transportation related issues. So as I mentioned, people from Asia, they're more a part of a collectivist culture versus people in the Western world, which thrives on independence, individualism, assertiveness. Some people may not be accustomed to that, so how that is portrayed to them or how they take that on could become alarming and threatening for themselves. As the largest receiver of international students worldwide, shifts in the US visa policies have substantial domestic and global implications for international student mobility. Donald Trump's recent restrictive migration regime, symbolized by border walls, travel bans, and quote-unquote higher American policies, continues to present new concerns for student migrants, the practitioners who advise them, and the institutions that rely on their fees. International students in the US now live in a precarious world in which no visa is a certainty, and globalization is positioned as an incipient threat to national identity. As an international student or a foreign national, you will generally need a visa to enter the US for any length of time. So the F1, the M visa, or the J visa that I mentioned earlier. The visa category for international students is F1. So international student visas are issued and regulated by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. And the whole process of obtaining a visa to either study in the US or to even work can be quite daunting, which then makes some students not want to come. So an F1 visa is issued to international students who are attending an academic program or English language program at a US college or university. F1 students must maintain the minimum course load for full-time student status. If not, then the immigration status could be in jeopardy. So for example, I think at most institutions, you need to be enrolled in at least a 12 credit course load, and you can only take at least one of those online. Otherwise, your immigration status could become in jeopardy. International students throughout the duration of their study have the opportunity to gain off-campus employment. However, this must be done through curricular practical training, also known as CPT. CPT employment is defined as alternative work study or internship, cooperative education, or any other type of required internship or practicum that is offered by sponsoring employers through cooperative agreements with the school. In order to qualify for this, the work experience must be required for your degree, or academic credit must be awarded. Students are also able to receive payment through their CPT employment period. These rigid requirements sometimes make it difficult for international students to secure off-campus employment. However, day by day, these are the struggles they endure. International students could run into issues including: one, they may not be able to have all the paperwork completed in a timely manner because the institution in which they're going to be working with part-time could have a strong delay in issuing the documents needed for authorization. For example, in summer 2018, I did a Kuhua internship, but to my knowledge, I wasn't aware that I needed to speak with my International Student Services department on campus at FIU. So I came to Arkansas, actually at UCA, for my internship, and then when it was time for me to get paid, I got a call from my International Student Services department back at FIU saying that I was in violation of my visa. And I instantly got scared because I was like, I really think that I followed all the rules. So when I spoke to my then supervisor, who is my now supervisor right now, she sat me down, we walked through, we talked through it, and we got it all sorted out. So just having those type of communication with people that are able to help you definitely goes a long way. International students in the United States in F1 immigration status are permitted to work off campus in optional practical training status during and after the completion of their degree. Students are also allowed to apply for OPT after being enrolled for at least 9 months, but cannot begin employment unless the necessary documentation is. So CPT is before you graduate, like if you're taking an internship or something along those lines, and then OPT is when you're getting ready to graduate. That is the documentation you will need to be using. So the great thing about OPT is that at the process of filing for it, you do not need to have a job offer in hand, and your OPT employment can occur anywhere within the US. The general requirements for OPT are as follows. So 1, employment must be directly related to the student's major. Student must maintain lawful F1 status. And 3, students must apply for OPT before the completion of all work towards a degree. So currently, I am going through the OPT process. So I'm currently job searching, and I can obtain my full documentation for my OPT before I get a job offer from any institution. As well, my job needs to be directly related to my degree. So I'm currently pursuing a master's in college student personnel administration. So wherever I'm trying to get a job has to fall under that range. So student affairs particularly. One struggle with OPT most students find themselves in is that once they finally graduate and are in the process of job searching, times run down on them and their OPT would expire, which then forces them to pursue either another degree or return to their home country. So if you're job searching, you have a year on OPT and you don't happen to find a job within that year that matches your degree, some students then pursue another degree. So let's say, for example, they were trying to get OPT on their bachelor's degree. They can then continue to pursue a master's degree, which then gives them more time to get OPT after their master's degree. If you're a master's student and you file for OPT, didn't get a job, you have the opportunity to go for a PhD, EDD, and doctorate, per se. Yeah. One issue some may argue as it pertains to OPT length is that certain programs or careers can get an extension on their OPT. So these include, but are not limited to, actual science, computer science application, engineering, engineering technologies, life sciences, mathematics, military technologies, and physical sciences. So primarily, if you're in the STEM field, you get an additional 3 years extension on your OPT. So somebody who may want to go into marketing and communication, they only have 1 year. So that's sort of like a little tug and tussle thing that different degrees have with others, because they're like, well, I don't think it's fair that somebody in the STEM field has the opportunity to work in the US for an additional 3 years versus me. After I get my 1 year, I then have to go and seek sponsorship from the institution or from the organization or company. So that has been a battle for quite some while among that equality process with OPT. So we talked about issues, challenges international students face. The question then becomes, how can we be intentional with our efforts to support our international students? As student affairs professionals, one thing we love is theory. So we're going to look at Schlossberg's transition theory, Aston's theory of involvement, as well as Sanford's challenge support theory, and how all three of these actually work together to aid in our intentionality efforts behind supporting our international students. So with Schlossberg, student affairs professionals can use Schlossberg's transition theory in the work they perform with international students as they witness these students going through these transitions, and by aiding them to make meaning of their experiences. Studies stated that attending college is a critical time of transition in the life of a student. It signals the beginning of one's independence because many students live away from home for the first time. It also marks a transition to the assumption of quote-unquote adult responsibilities and serves as a time of reflection where students develop a perception of where they will fit into the world and what their future career will be. According to Schlossberg, transition is viewed as a change in behavior or relations in response to an event or non-event that affects one's beliefs about oneself or the world. So if you know Schlossberg transition theory, you know she has a moving in, moving through, and moving out process, as well as the 4 S's: situation, self, support, strategy. So as these international students are moving in, they're coming into a new environment, going through a new journey, they're leaving family and friends behind, moving from interdependence to independence. The situation is basically starting school. We as student affairs professionals, particularly housing and res life professionals, we need to make sure that we're assisting these students within the moving in process, whether it be recommending them to get involved, supporting them in any type of way possible that we can, and then help them move through. So helping them become more acclimated to the university, checking in on them to make sure that they're building support groups within student orgs and residence halls. Also having those conversations with them to see if they've identified ways to make the most out of their college experience, whatever that looks like to them. And then in the moving out process, they're preparing to take on the world after graduation, and doing so, they'll then be utilizing campus resources such as international student services as well as career services. So we also see how those 4 S's play into each of the moving process: situation, starting school, as well as getting acclimated to the university and their transition process. That self piece, they're thinking, how can I become more involved? What can I do to make the most out of this experience? Support. They're finding support, whether it be through their roommates in their room or their hall, their floor mates, their wing mates, their suite mates. They're finding support within these student orgs on campus. And then the strategy. What's the next step after I graduate? What do I want to do after I graduate? So having those conversations with them, planning out their future, where they want to return home, they want to remain within the US, they want to continue school, get a master's, a PhD, something along those lines. Help them develop an intentional strategy that will help them achieve these goals. Aston's theory of involvement and Sanford's challenge support theory. So Aston's theory of involvement states that the more involved the student is, the higher chance of retention and academic success. So as we encourage our students to become involved, we should work to challenge them to do so on their own, while providing guidance for them along the way. With Sanford's challenge support theory, we want to provide a challenge for them and then let them show us how they're going to work towards accomplishing that task. So with Aston's theory of involvement, we need to push our students to get involved in student orgs. So finding out what they like and then recommending them to them. Whether they want to be a part of RHA, NRHH, they have interest in fraternity and sorority life, or even through on-campus employment. Figure out their needs and wants, and then work towards providing those resources for them to supplement them. You want to be as intentional as possible. So definitely getting involved with your international student population and accommodating them as best as you can. With Stanford's challenge support theory, the goal is growth and engagement. You want to see that student grow from where they were when they were moving in the process to as they prepare to move out. So that's based on intentional resident interactions. So whether it be during moving, sometimes international students have their own moving. So getting to build that connection with them before the domestic students or everybody else moves in, either the day after or the day after that. Getting to know them name by name, whether it be you just taking a stroll through the building and just like not doing door knocks, something along those lines, actually going above and beyond to create those intentional relationships with them. Whether it be you be collaborating with campus partners. So we want to ensure that we're collaborating with our International Student Services Department to actually see what they're doing for our international students to become more intentional and engaging. Intentional is going to be the word of the day, because you really want to make sure that what you're doing, you're showing effort and you care. They want to see that you're really going above and beyond for them, because those interactions and actions actually leave an impact on them. So whether it be recommending resources on and off campus, so they look for internships. We're in student affairs. We know a plethora of people because the field is so small. So if someone has interest in pursuing an internship at Texas Tech, if you have connects and resources there, reach out to them and be like, hey, I have a student who's interested in, let's say, student activities. What can I best do to connecting with you? Or what can I best do to connect them with you to help them prepare for that internship? Whether it be they have an assignment and they come to you for support and you're able to help them, try to do as best as you can to do it. So we need to ensure that we're staying in contact with our key campus partners who work with that specific population. We need to know what they're doing and how it impacts how our students operate and live within our halls. So questions to ask our key campus partners: what initiatives or programs they have in place to support students? What can they do more to ensure the success of these students? So what can we do to accommodate and assist them in providing more success for our students? We can then educate ourselves about the different offices in place to support our students and incorporate that within our in-hall activities. So for example, having a community newsletter and including events and programs from that office so other students are aware of how they can increase their cultural competence as well. If you have a newsletter and you're sending it around monthly with programs and events that are happening within the International Student Service Office, other students who are not international students will be able to see that and go and perhaps check it out. So some things UCA International Engagement Office does on campus, they provide shopping shuttles for international students to go to Walmart and Kroger, and also provide shuttles to shopping outlets in Little Rock, as well as providing shuttles to the airport during the breaks. So find out if that's something that your university does and see how best you can collaborate to even improve it. Or if it's something that they don't do, tap into other institutions and see how did they make that work and propose that change for your campus as well. Because some of these international students really need things like this. Not everyone has transportation to go shopping. Not everyone has friends with transportation to go shopping. And even if they do, they may not want to bother them all the time. So definitely being intentional with your initiatives to provide and support ways that will help your students thrive within the residence halls. Another thing UCA did was provide laptops to students who were in need. So on the general scale, UCA, they had like a laptop initiative where they gave out laptops to students who were in need, didn't have one, or was affected by the COVID situation. However, in that general scale, international students were excluded from that. So what the International Student Engagement Office did, they went above and beyond because they know we have a heavy population of international students here on campus, and some of them do not have laptops. So they went above and beyond to find ways to get laptops just for international students and provided them with those. So see what your offices are doing if they're taking steps and initiatives like this to intentionally provide for the international students as well. International engagement also has a Go Global program, which pairs American students with international students as a mentor-mentee dynamic to aid within their transition. So perhaps that is something you may want to think about implementing, whether on a large scale within the department or even within your residence halls. Get with your RAs, your student staff, and see how best you can facilitate something along those lines. So whether it's finding out how many international students live on a floor, how many live in the building in total, and then pairing them up with a domestic student to create like that budget. This could even help with the resident interactions, because let's say, for example, you're seeing more of the domestic student versus the international student. You can ask, hey, how is your buddy doing? Is there something that we can do to help support that buddy dynamic, you know, to make it grow, to make it improve, to make it worthwhile for both the domestic student as well as the international student? Because within that dynamic as well, they are learning from each other. You want to ensure that they are creating long-lasting friendships and relationships among each other as well. And then the impact of what we do. So before I end, I really want to talk about my story as an international student and the steps I've taken, steps along my journey, and just mention some key people who really helped me get to where I'm at, and which really made me fall in love with one, residence life, and working with international students as myself. So when I first came to the US in 2016, I attended the Florida International University in Miami, Florida. Go Panthers. And my RA was actually somebody that I knew from back home. So that instantly made that transition process a lot easier, because I felt comfortable with him and I already knew that if I had any problems, issues, I can go to him directly and talk about it. So he then got me involved on campus, like whether it was through Hall Council, joining CSA as well, just to help me feel much more acclimated and comfortable on campus as well. And then through my involvement in Hall Council, his supervisor saw my potential, and she actually sat down with me and was like, hey, do you want to become an RA? And I was like, why not, you know? So I then became an RA spring 2017, fall, spring 2017, so a year after. And just seeing the work that RAs do for their residents and actually doing that role made me fall in love with student affairs even more. So I asked my supervisor then, what is something like I can do to even further, especially res life, because of the impact that I see that you have on residents. Then she mentioned a Kuhuai because I was a rising senior. So then that's when I went on Kuhuai, found UCA, came to Arkansas summer of 2018, found my amazing supervisor, Benita, and during that internship, I was a conference coordinator. And then I think actually doing the work, going from being supervised to supervising, really opened up my eyes and perspective of how this realm is. And then that's when I spoke with her like, hey, I think I'm interested in like pursuing a master's after I graduate in higher ed. What are like the steps to get that done? Because being a first generation graduate, I've never had like any type of influence like that. Being the first person in my family to get a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree in like 84 days, can't wait. It's something inspirational and motivational. It really keeps me going and pushes me towards achieving what I want to achieve. And then we sat down, she talked to me about, you know, UCA's program, becoming a GA here, and I said, okay, I'll consider it. Then when it was time for me to actually grad school search, interviewed, got it. Came here 2019, summer 2019, was an RC for apartment complexes. And I think being an RA in an apartment complex, I already had that experience and knowledge of how upperclassmen students work. So I know it was not going to be that difficult for me to actually create those relationships. And then did that, got it done. Second year now, got transferred to Greek Village Housing. And me being a member of a Greek organization, it also made that transition easy, but it was difficult because one, I'm a member of a Black Greek-led organization, and I'm supervising a Panhellenic sorority community. So that we already had some detachments because we come from different councils. However, I use that as a challenge to come more engaged with my residents, especially being a Black male interacting with white women. So went above and beyond to get those intentional interaction with my residents as well as my RAs. And then moving forward now, both communities have grown, and I've definitely grown as a supervisor, as a student affairs professional, to really see the impact that I have not only on my student staff, but on my residents. Just having some residents like randomly email us saying like, hey, you're one of the best RCs that I've had so far. Thank you for really making the experience worthwhile. And I definitely want to live in the house next year. So little stuff like that really shows me that the work I'm doing isn't going unnoticed as much as I think. And then now I currently job searching just because of my work within the profession to work as a full-time professional staff within housing and residence life after I graduate. And that started just by my supervisor in undergrad giving me a chance to be an RA, and then my current supervisor now just giving me a chance to be somebody supervising other people. You know, so those little experiences, those little anecdotes really make you appreciate the job, appreciate the students, and want to do what you're doing even more. Don't get burned out. But yeah, that's basically the end of my presentation. Thank you all for taking the time out to listening. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in that. Oh, and don't forget to fill out the evaluation as well.
Hey, Travis, there was a question in here. If you could share your presentation in the chat.
Yes.
Any other questions for Travis?
If you send me your email, I can definitely get it to you.
Anyway, you can. I think if you let me see here. Yeah. Yep. So we can also get it. So if you want to put your email in there, and probably be best to have them, and then he can send it to you. That'd be great. Or you can. I don't know, Travis. You have your contact information. You put that in the chat. Thank you, Travis, for your great insight into international students versus both on a research level and as a personal level. It was very insightful to hear. Again, as Joe said, please make sure you're filling out the survey, and looking forward to seeing all of you at future sessions as well. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and we'll see you soon. Thanks again for Travis.